Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1852 AN. Today's date is April 26, 2019, and the title of the episode is Central Bank's Slowing Growth Narrative Falls Apart. The Economic Plan is Working. Now, before I get started, I wanted to talk about crypto, stocks, binary options, gold. There has never been a better time in history to trade these financial instruments. Trade Genius over the last 30 days has netted its traders over 50% on their money from spot-on trades. If you've never traded before and want to take advantage of these types of profits every day in the market, I urge you to sign up for one of the many Trade Genius online educational courses. Right now, through April, for their Easter specials, you can save 50% off their bundled specials or use their promo code Easter for 40% off all non-bundled items. Check out TradeGeniusAcademy.com. Tell them X22 sent you. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we're starting to see the central bank's narrative. It is falling apart. They were making the case that the economy, the global economy, is slowing because of Trump's tariffs. But we're starting to find out that this has nothing to do with tariffs, and we mentioned this before, but we can see that this happened once before where the world slowed, and this was during the financial crisis, and it slowed a lot more than it's slowing now. Actually, it has been pumped up from 2016 onward. It's slowing a little bit, but if you go back to the financial crisis, it was much, much worse. So that narrative is falling apart. And the plan that the Patriots have put forth, it is completely working. Think about what is happening right now. The central bank's plan of letting the world know that it's Trump's fault, that the global economy is falling apart, that narrative is going to be pushed aside because there's going to be a deal in China. Tariffs eventually will be removed, and that whole story will be completely gone. We see that the Fed, they're holding rates steady, and most likely they're going to be lowering them. And the central bank is completely exposed, and they're piling on more and more debt. Countries have to continually borrow, and it's the central banks that are going to have the problem, not Trump, not the Patriots. And the plan is working with deregulation, with making deals and tax incentives, bringing companies back to the U.S., creating more jobs. It is all happening. And remember, Trump has the magic wand. Let's go out to the UK because May was proposing to have her plan voted on once again for the fourth time. But it looks like she's going to abandon the plans to have it voted on because she's not really going to change it. And the Parliament is looking at this saying, what are we doing here? We're not going to vote on the same exact thing over and over and over. And we see Nigel Farage, he confirmed his Brexit party will take part in the next general election, and it looks like they're trying to force Theresa May completely out of this. Remember, this is the EU's plan. It's not the people's plan. Now, here in the United States, we see the U.S. economy, it has surged unexpectedly, out of nowhere. I mean, they used to say this during Obama's presidency. The economy surged unexpectedly. Well, that's because of the magic wand. In the first quarter of 2019, we saw a 3.2% growth. Economists predicted 2.5%. Much, much higher. The U.S. economy was boosted by a shrinking trade gap via the Wall Street Journal. A factor that boosted growth was a shrinking trade gap. The pace of American exports continued to rise in the first quarter, while the rate of imports fell as Americans cut back on purchases of foreign goods. Evidently, President Trump is winning the trade war. Greg Abbott tweeted out, Texas exports rise 3 times faster than the U.S. increase, keeping Texas #1 in America for exports. In fact, Texas represents nearly 20% of all U.S. exports in January to February period. Donald Trump Jr. tweeted out, wow, 3.2% GDP growth. I guess the 1% Obama new normal was really only because of his administration's terrible policies, ideas, and job-crushing regulations and taxation. voters take note. Now, we need to go back in time to understand what Donald Trump Jr. is talking about. The new normal was during Obama's presidency. Remember, well, the way we see unemployment right now, that's the new normal. GDP between 1 and 1.75%, that is the new normal. Slow growth in housing, that is the new normal. Everyone needs to understand that this is the new normal. The economy will no longer grow. Get used to it. This is how it's going to be. They were brainwashing the American people. They are preparing the American people for a third world type of country. This is why they were pushing regulations. This is why they were increasing taxes. This is why they were doing everything they possibly could do to keep businesses out of the United States, because this was their major plan. And now we see the opposite happening, where all of a sudden we don't have the new normal anymore. Now we have growth. Yes, this is manipulated. It's with the magic wand. Trump is using all their tools against them. But if you notice, the mainstream media, they won't give him credit. Why? Well, because we have the 2020 elections coming up. If they give him credit for the economy, guess what? People will look at this. People will say, wow, look at the economy he gave us. We no longer have that Obama economy. We have the Trump economy, and it's roaring. Why would we want to go back? And this is why they're being very, very careful. And plus, they're on the path to try to bring down the economy, which is not going to happen because they completely lost control. They just don't know that yet. Now, the central bankers, the IMF, they've been telling us that global growth is slowing and it's because of the tariffs. It has nothing to do with the central bank. It has nothing to do with debt. It has nothing to do with any of that except for the tariffs. Now, the Merchandise World Trade Monitor, they released a report, and it says that the world trade volume is falling most since the financial crisis. Now, keep that in mind. It is down 3.4% from the peak in October and down 1.1% from February a year earlier. Now, if we look at the world trade volume and we look at the index, when Trump came into office in 2016-2017, the index was at 115. The index reached right at the beginning of 2019 around 127. So we went from 115 when he first came into office all the way up to 127. Prior to that, the index was at 105 back in 2011, and it made it up to 115. Now, think about this for a second. So Trump has brought the world trade volume while he was president, and this has moved up since he's been in his presidency, even when he introduced tariffs. And if we go back in time, we can see during 2008, 2009, we've had many times where the world trade volume dipped. And we're seeing it dip once again. And we haven't seen a dip like this since the financial crisis. Remember that. The financial crisis. There were no tariffs. It was the central bank. What has changed right now? We've added more debt. The central bank system is coming to an end. Trump's tariffs, they will be going away. And we explained this before. The tariffs have no impact on this. Actually, if you look at the culprits, if you look at which countries are involved and which ones are slowing, well, it looks like it's imports and exports by China and the emerging Asian economies of Hong Kong, India, South Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, Thailand, Philippines, Pakistan, Singapore. China is by far the largest economy in this emerging Asia and by far the largest importer and exporter. China is having the problem. It's not because of the tariffs, has nothing to do with that. Exports by this economically vast and rapidly growing region fell by 8.3% in February from a year earlier, after having zigzagged lower for months, according to the World Trade Monitor. The data is volatile, with large month-to-month up and downs. This is what the central banks are doing, but they're trying to turn it around and say that it's the tariffs. Now, you know that Trump is going to make a deal with China. You know the tariffs are going to be removed. And we've already showed that it's the first middleman that purchased the product that gets hit with the percentage, not the American people. So if he places a 10 or 20% tariff on a product that's coming in from China, it's not like the price increases 10 to 20%. It increases maybe in pennies or not at all, because it's the first middleman in China that purchased that product that gets hit with the tariff. So that individual, that middleman, will pay 10%. But again, there's costs that might counter this, and most of the time, the American people don't even see it. But it makes it difficult for China and the middlemen there. So this is not going to slow anything. Actually, what is happening is the United States, like we just said before, we're exporting more and not taking in products. He's changing the dynamic, and it has to be done, because once the petrodollar is gone, our trade deals have to completely change. We have to change with the times, and that's what he's doing. Now, something very interesting with President Xi, he pledged to crack down on corruption and institute sustainable lending controls for all BRI projects. Now, he did this when he was talking about the Belt and Road. And we can see there's a lot of countries signing on to this. And he's saying that we need to keep this whole entire system completely transparent. And this is exactly what Trump, Mnuchin, Lighthizer, this is what they've been pushing for with Xi Jinping. And it looks like he is now working in that direction. He's also talking about taking control of debt and not having so much debt. Now, this is very interesting. Think about what Trump is doing. He has been using the Federal Reserve free money to build the wall, to build the infrastructure back up here in the United States, to build the military. China has been using the central bank's free money to build cities, to build the infrastructure. And what do you think is coming next? Why do you think they're talking about debt? Because their plan is to get rid of the Rothschild central bank system. And right now, Trump has complete and utter control. Larry Kudlow, he was on Newsmax TV, and he was talking about the economy and talking about how he believes the rates are going to be cut. And of course, he made it perfectly clear that, well, I'm not saying that we're telling the Fed what to do. They're completely independent. But I do believe that the Federal Reserve is finally moving towards cutting interest rates, which means they have control over the Fed. Now, this is out of the wealthresearchgroup.com/take. There's a report there, and it says the Fed's failures and excuses are wearing thin, and Wall Street is now figuring out what Main Street will learn after it's too late. The Fed is not in control of inflation rates. In effect, the president is calling out the Fed for its loss of credibility and its loss of control over the economy. Taking over the Federal Reserve in order to absorb and eliminate it is a plan that fits perfectly into Trump's overriding philosophy of promoting economic growth and curbing overregulation. A Fed takeover would effectively roll back the broad regulatory powers entrusted to the central bank with the passage of the Dodd-Frank Act in July of 2010. Shifting economic control from the Federal Reserve to Washington could prove to be the most business-friendly pro-jobs move that Trump has ever made. And if we go back in time and we look at some of Trump's tweets, this is from February 9, 2012. This is way before he was a candidate for the presidency. He said, the Fed is destroying the dollar. When inflation hits the economy, then even more jobs will go overseas. He understands the Fed is the problem. Inflation is the problem. What is inflation? That is the dollar losing value over time, and you need more and more of the Federal Reserve debt notes to pay for the same exact item. And he's right. By the Fed doing this, we lose jobs. What he's doing, he's taking over the Fed. He's going to control the Fed. He's going to give the creation of currency back to the people. This is the ultimate plan. Because if the people have control of creating their own currency, they don't have to loan it to themselves with interest, like a private Western central bank system. Think about it. We create the currency and we use the currency. There's no interest attached, which means we don't run up debt because we don't owe that money. If we don't have that debt because we don't have interest, do we need income tax? When did income tax come into play? When the Federal Reserve was born. Why? Because who was going to pay for the interest on the currency that was being borrowed? It was the people. If the people take control of the creation of currency, there is no interest, which means there's no debt, which means we don't need an income tax to pay for that debt because we don't have the interest on the money. Everything that we've learned about the economy growing up since 1913 was created by the central bank. We've accepted that this is normal. We pay income tax, that this is normal, that we need to take out loans to pay for things, that we need a credit card to survive. This was created by the central bank. It's because of the central bank system that we need to live like this. Get rid of the central bank system, our lives will be completely different. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.